Welcome to another episode of Dubai Works Business Podcast. This time I'm recording in isolation from home, and I had the pleasure of being joined with Andrew Maskall. So Andrew is the CEO of Media and Middle East Youth Media. And today on the show, we discussed their first episode, their first series, their first program, As You Are, and how has that developed from a YouTube series into a streaming business. And a different platform as well. We discussed everything from influencers to media trends across the region, different talent management things, different trends. And Andrew has over 30 years experience in the TV and production space. So I hope you enjoyed the episode and do follow and subscribe on all the different audio platforms. And to see this in full, if you're not watching the video, it's on smashy.tv or all the @Smashy TV YouTube social media platforms.
Good morning, Richard.
Nice to hear you and see you.
Likewise, yes.
And so you're in the production industry. Are you working at home at the moment?
I am, yes. Yes, it kind of works for me, to be honest, because we do most of our productions on location. And anyway, it's just lovely here in Dubai at the moment, sitting outside as I am now. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it really is the best time of the year in many ways. It's beautiful weather and a nice fresh start, positive start to the year for everyone.
Indeed.
Yeah, exactly. So just we'll go into your company, but can you talk a little bit about the pandemic? Has that affected your industry? And, you know, we hear lots of discussion around productions and things needing to adjust and maybe a shift to animation and things like that. How have you found it?
Well, it has. It was the cause of a major shift in our strategy, actually, because we started off and still are our commercial models based on advertising or branded content, and because a lot of the budgets were getting frozen, we made a decision to go towards streaming platforms. Which, on the contrary, was actually starting to spend more, because obviously home entertainment's actually on the up at the moment. So we literally shifted our commercial model.
And your business planning and your strategy towards streaming. Interesting. So can you talk about Is that the company that you're talking about, and when that started and what you do?
Yes, stands for As You Are. It's because we're making what we call relatable content. The company is Media LLC. That is one company. The holding company is called Middle East Youth Media. You know, I represent a number of shareholders, and we have a vision to make youth content in Arabic, premium youth content. Yes, that's the idea.
Okay, interesting. And a holding company in terms of a structure, or do you have different production pieces? You know, what sort of offering do you provide to clients and audience?
Yes, indeed, it's a holding company in terms of a structure, and the idea is that Media, it will be the first of them. And this is one targeting young females, Gen Z, and then we'll do a second and a third targeting, you know, gamers, for example, or football fans, all around this idea of relatable youth content.
Interesting. Yeah, I had a look at the YouTube channel, and kind of very impactful, very entertaining in terms of youthful presenters. You can see that it's very social in its nature, and obviously that's by design. Is that is that a show that you've just launched? Is there are you solely dedicated on YouTube? What's the plans for this series?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So YouTube is the main platform, as you say, for the series, but we obviously have a network approach on Instagram, and increasingly on TikTok as well. But as I touched on earlier, we decided to hibernate the YouTube channel in the second half of last year because of the pandemic, and made a decision to produce a television series. It doesn't carry the name Aya. It's actually called Zeros La Heroes, which is a kind of mashup of English and Arabic. Yeah, season 1. And
so Zeros,
yeah.
not heroes. So more focusing on the zero part. Is that right?
Well, it's kind of ironic because obviously the girls aren't zeros at all. It's the idea of the TV show is that you could call it the Middle East's next top influencer, but we deliberately haven't positioned it as that, although it is a competition, and you know, it's led by a mentor who is a successful vlogger. Really, you could almost say, you know, 4 want to be influencers, or do they really want to be influencers? Because along the way, on the journey, we examine really, you know, what is an influencer, and indeed, is it really a career you want to go into? So we've deliberately done it on the level because I believe, you know, the whole philosophy of our company, As You Are, is to be you know, responsible. I think, as you know, social media can be very damaging to young people. So we're not educational at all, but we're aware of that. You know, this whole aspirational idea, you know, these impossible looking women, you know, living perfect lives is something. I think the market is developing beyond that now into what we call relatable content. In other words, the presenter, even on TV, is on the same level as me. You know, it's especially for young people. You know, we relate very directly.
Accessible, interactive, more dynamic, more two-way. Interesting. I'd love it. We'll talk a lot more about the influencer space and about how you would produce such a show. But just before we pass it, you mentioned the youth media. Can we just dissect that a little bit more? You know, we often see big statistics around population in the Middle East being under 30, and, you know, varying on country, that's in the majority of numbers. And, you know, but what does that actually mean? When some people, they talk about Gen Z or millennials, and other people say, well, obviously we need to produce content because younger people use mobile phones and social media. But from your point of view, and then there's issues that younger people in emerging markets and in transitional kind of societies, that issues might be different for younger people. How do you view that in terms of creating content, and what was your thesis for the group with regards to youth?
Okay, yeah, great question. So it started, as I say, I am, you know, I've been in media, as I say, my whole career, 30 years, initially on the production side, but most of it as a marketeer. And, you know, I observed really that the young Arabs really gravitated to YouTube, you know, more, in fact, than anywhere else in the world, particularly in places like Saudi. Now, there are a number of reasons for that. One was because it's so open, the space, but 2, because I think television in particular wasn't really serving that audience at all. So they made YouTube their home and created a lot of their own content. You know, and a lot of it is really good vloggy content. So I saw that was the gap in the market that I observed. You know, the next challenge then is really, can you make content that really they will relate to? that for me, the first thing to do is to find the right talent, find very relatable young people. And that's what we've been doing.
So it wasn't necessarily just the YouTube piece, in terms of the pandemic, and you moved to streaming. It's almost platform agnostic. There's just a gap with. Yeah. There is this cohort of demographic, but it's just not being served by media in general.
1,000,000%, absolutely. It's very much driven by that. As you say, number of things. It's such a big slice of the audience here are young. It's such a young audience. 2, the timing is right. I mean, frankly, I was thinking about doing a football fan channel first. But because Saudi and MBS has opened things up for young women, the timing the timing's right to do something for young women now, and that's why one of the reasons why young women and some of our talent are Haliji, Saudi and Emirati. They're willing to get in front of the camera now and be very open. Yeah. They're expressing themselves. It's fantastic.
Great, interesting. So with that concept, talking about the female space, a number of creators and directors and filmmakers have tackled this female empowerment in different ways. Even international brands have done campaigns around these issues. There's some publications across the region that tackle different parts of the topics, and I've seen some movies recently by Saudi directors on Netflix, showing the talent behind young females and ambition and the intelligence, basically. What sort of angles do you look at? Are you trying to kind of map things out? Are you just looking for stories, or how do you approach it creatively?
Well, yes, a great question. I mean, first of all, this type of content is driven by their interests, their passion points, if you like. Okay. I mentioned, and when we launched frankly, it was a fairly narrow, focusing on one of the top interests, which is fashion and beauty. Not in a narrow sense. I mean, fashion and beauty is an amazing space, but because really through feedback from the talent, also from the crew, my crew and producers are all female as well. They said, we need to go wider than that. So so what's driving it is, as I say, all these, passion points. We're going to be doing episodes on fitness and starting up your own business. The television series, like I told you, is about being an influencer, which is an area of huge interest here, as it is among youth in the rest of the world. So that's if you like where we draw our inspiration or our facts and figures from, and then we've got a little format. I don't know how many episodes of you've watched on YouTube, but it's a very simple format. We bring in a guest, usually a guest influencer. Might be someone like Haifa Basaiso from Fly with Haifa, who's got a huge YouTube following and Instagram, and she comes in and sets them a challenge, and then really there's a reveal where she judges their performance. So it's a little competition. Very simple format, but the idea is it's very flexible and open, and it also allows the girls to be themselves and express themselves. So very versatile.
Interesting. Great, thanks for explaining that. So similar to maybe the talent shows in other markets or The Apprentice or things like that, but you have a different guest each time. And Andrew, in terms of conventions, like, is this really non-scripted? Are you sort of letting them be themselves and off script sort of how they perform and what they say?
Okay, well, you made 2 points there. To your first point, yes, similar to things like, say, Arab's Got Talent, but very different in approach, because in those shows, which are much bigger in scale anyway, you've got a sort of mentor approach, if you like, that I was talking about, really, where the mentors are sort of up here, sort of judging down on these. This is all on the level with the audience. So even the influencers, the guests, or the host of our television show, she is on the level. She might be called a guide rather than a mentor. So our whole approach is very much that relatable concept I talked about. So that's the first point you made. Your second question, remind me, was about,
just in terms of are you producing non-scripted episodes?
So yes, this is unscripted drama. Yes, it is. These girls they're all talented, interesting, but they're not actresses. They're not trained. So you've got to give them scenarios rather than scripts. But within that scenario, you're usually looking for a story. You're aware of the different characters of each of your girls, your talents, and you're setting things up. You're aware of certain triggers, so you want to create drama. So this is how reality drama works.
Yeah. Interesting. And before we move on to sort of YouTube and the series and the platforms and questions around that, just finally on sort of content around female, this topic of As You Were and Zeros La Heroes, are you these topics are kind of accessible to people who aren't in that demographic? For example, you and I would like to watch this because we'd like to see what's happening in that group and in that mindset. Is that what are you trying to create universal sort of populist material here?
Well, that's a great question, Richard, and very much so. So, in the television series, for example, we feature the girls' families, so we get their perspective on social media as well. So we're aware, really, that this is something. The whole influencer space, for example, is intriguing to everyone, isn't it? And so yes, this is certainly of universal interest, and even beyond the Middle East. So we're definitely going to subtitle this series, and I think people around the world will find it fascinating. Really, I mean, I think the press, the media, does tend to sort of categorise, say, Arab women. Say that they're closed off and the rest of it. Well, believe me, they are not. They are strong young women. It's not like that at all.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Really, working in this industry in the Middle East, when what you see day to day is, isn't the themes and the general perception that the world, the image that's portrayed. And it's just going to be so fascinating almost watching people discover the many talents and this generation as they kind of emerge.
1,000,000%. I think this is a good time to be a young person in the Middle East. I really do. And I think, as you say, the West has got a perception that isn't necessarily true.
Yeah. And what about influencers, Andrew? Do you find them difficult to deal with, as is another perception? Or how would you, let me phrase it more diplomatically, how would you compare dealing with influencer talent and regular industry actors' talent?
Oh, another great question. Put it this way, for sure, influencers are aware of their value, and you know, some very aware of their value. So yeah, negotiations can be difficult, and persuading them that it's of mutual interest. I think again, you know, talent, they're all individual people, so you can't generalize. But yeah, certainly it's an area where I find one of the most difficult areas for me, and one where I'm actually bringing in a production manager who's more sort of expert, you know, on you know, on making it work for the influencers as well. I mean that in a two-way, because we've got to give them value and build their careers as well. So what I've been talking about is when we're dealing with the big influencers, the guests, you know, the girls themselves, you know, who are what you might call micro influencers. The girls, our main presenters, they range between less than 1,000 and over 100,000 followers, but they're still what you'd call deliberately micro influencers. So they are, so they are obviously on this journey with us, and you know, more manageable, you know, because the job is to persuade them that, you know, we're here on this journey together. If it's a big hit, then you're going to benefit from it as well. And yes, there's also an element of competition between them. We've now got, I think, over 10 girls in the squad. So obviously, it's a bit like managing a football team. You know, you're going to make the first team.
Yeah.
I hope they don't see this if you do. No, I'm sure
they all get picked. They're all in the team.
Yeah. Obviously. No, but the point is that every episode only has like three to four girls in each episode, so they're not all in every episode.
Yeah. So many interesting questions around the influencer space, and maybe we'll just talk about it for a little while. You know, the commercial side of it is one aspect, and I think negotiating for content, I assume, as you alluded to, is tricky because of what, you know, influencers were paid a lot of money. There are examples of cost per post. They obviously have a livelihood, and they, you know, many of them do that full time, but it sort of sets standards, and then where do we go from here? And then there's all the rules around, you know, labeling things as sponsored. What is authentic? Am I doing a marketing job? And then there's the career aspect to it, which is, okay, sure, you can have revenue for commercial appearances, but are you a creator, and are you building a portfolio of, you know, work that you can kind of, that you can fall back on in the future? Do you think it's maturing? Are the people that you speak to, Andrew, sort of recognizing that, okay, if I do 3 or 4 series episodes here, this could lead to something else?
I certainly think it's maturing. It's probably got a long way to go. It's still very much a blossoming young industry, and it's going to get, obviously, it's going to become more. If it's going to be, I don't think corporate's the right word, but certainly the big media companies are going to get involved somehow, because at the moment it's, as you say, a diaspora of lots of individuals, you know, all learning from each other, from what their content is. But some of them, the top ones, are very savvy, very hard-working. You know, if I take, you know, Haifa, Pesaso, you know, I don't know if you've seen Fly with Haifa. I mean, she's super talented, but she works very hard, and she's always learning from what she does and making mistakes as well. I mean, she, you know, she gets trolled and bullied on there, and you know, and she's very open. You see her breaking down in tears sometimes at the treatment she's getting. It's very relatable. So the answer is she's building a series. She's focused on an area. It's a travel vlog, and she's building a whole series out of that. She's also doing side businesses like I think she's launched a jewelry and a fashion range. So an example of someone who's turning a vlog into a growing business.
Brand in a business. Yeah, it's fascinating when we see sort of the different aspects to your individual. You are the brand, but then you have many facets to that. So appearance fees, content, your own brands, your own profiles, and then products that you can launch. Really interesting space.
Yeah.
Do you think that young people, when they say they want to be an influencer, is it that they want to be independent, that they want, they like having the attention, more followers than their friends, or that they want to be famous? Like, how would you describe that? Like, when we were younger, you'd ask a classroom of 30 people and they'd say, I want to be an astronaut. Or maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago, people say, I want to work for Google. Now it's, I want to be an influencer. But what do they actually mean by that?
Yeah, good. Well, I mean, again, defining Gen Z, this is a generation that has never been without social media. First of all, you see that how comfortable they are in front of the camera. That's one of the reasons you get good content, relatable content out of them, because there's no filter. So they're very natural in this space, first of all, and then they get their they follow their influencers very closely. So you remember that boxing fight that happened between the big, huge British and the huge American vlogger. Both of them were gamers, actually, but they ended up having a boxing fight. They weren't professional boxers, but it got a bigger following, a bigger audience than I don't know. The heavyweight finals. It's ridiculous, and I watched that. With my son is 21 and a group of his friends, and they were rooting for those guys like they were their mates. Wow. Not they didn't care that they weren't particularly good boxers. They just wanted them to, because that's my guy and that's my guy. So what I'm leading to is that they identify so closely with those guys. They think it's very natural if I want to be one myself. So I don't think it's just a matter of getting a number of followers, although they probably are competitive on that. But I don't think that's the main reason to be famous for its own sake. I think they see it as a viable career. They see that people are making money. It's something they enjoy, where you can express yourself, be creative. I mean, content creation, as you said, is a lot more interesting perhaps than just being just being an influencer on its own. If you're actually producing some imaginative content around an area which you're passionate about. One of our girls, Marwa, the Emirati girl, amazing young lady. She's an endurance horse rider. So she's, she does a lot of vlogging around content around that. Brilliant.
Amazing. Interesting. Andrew, what about TikTok houses? They seem to have sprung up in the US, where a number of teens jump into a house together and then they brand it and they do all sorts. Is that something that you might have considered for, say, the group of As You Are group, or and do you think there's some cultural connotations that people mightn't necessarily leave their homes and live somewhere else in this region, or why haven't we seen more of those in the region?
Cool. It's not. I don't know much about these TikTok houses, I must admit. If it's happening the way, I can certainly see it happening here. And TikTok has grown so quickly here, hasn't it? I'm still learning about TikTok. I've got to be honest with you, and it's certainly an area we want to get into more.
Interesting. But working with content and working with creators is what you're doing. And when you sort of the streaming trends that we've seen grow over the last few years, and particularly last year, obviously it's moving very fast. What were some of the platform decisions that you made last year? And can you tell us from a inside in the industry point of view, how would one go about approaching streaming platforms with a series? And what have you experienced?
Interesting, yeah. So yes, they're growing. I mean, we've got Netflix, but we've got the likes of NBC Shahid now, you know, making a decision to be the Netflix of the Middle East, and they'll do that by having more Arabic content. So that they will be looking to originate more Arabic content for the platform itself. What I'm looking and I'm hoping will happen is like in the UK and most of the West, is you get a growing independent production sector. I mean, historically, really, most production has been done by the big television companies in-house. So I'm hoping that this, you know, they've got this big need for huge machines that need more and more content. So I'm hoping that they start looking more to the independent sector for that content and give that the independent sector a chance to grow, be more competitive and more creative. With regard to approaching them, yes, I mean, the traditional way is you go in with a presentation and look to get a commission. It's not easy going to the stations with a concept at all. It can take a lot of time. We decided to fully fund our series, which means that you're going to them not with a concept, you're going with a finalized product. So we believe in it. We believe that what we're doing, we believe in it so much that we're going to just take the finished product to them, you know, to the various channels and see, you know, which is the best fit on both sides, on which channel it goes. Getting funding, I mean, you know, I getting funding for a series is not easy because it's expensive, and you know, I obviously you have to do a business plan around each individual series you're doing and persuade your shareholders that you've got a meaningful investment.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So has it changed in terms of, provided that a Shahid or a Stars Play or a Netflix, provided that they've allocated budget to production, you know, are they funding you in the same way that in the past, if you had a production for a TV show, are you being remunerated in the same way, or has the business model changed?
No, it hasn't changed. It's always been the same. As you say, there's the two approaches. You approach to get a commission, in which case the television company will pay you up front, and the television company will pay you up front, and then they very much own and control the series. Or the way, as you say, we're doing it, which is going with a fully funded approach. So both approaches have always been there. I think what is changing maybe with streaming platform is that now the companies are actually originating stuff for streaming. So in the past, NBC, for example, it was catch-up TV, isn't it? But now you see Netflix originals or Shahid originals that you know, OSN as well. They're actually doing stuff for digital first. So you know, it's an exciting time.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Yeah, I think with music, there's a variable fee. An artist might get paid or a rev share, but with streaming, it seems to be, as you mentioned, if they have the budgets, it was passed on from a production point of view. So do you think it hinders or harms sort of launching on social first, or do you think that helps? And if you're speaking to a streaming platform, would they like to see the fact that you've got a presence online as well? Would that help them make a decision?
I hope so. It should do. I mean, what they should see is, one, it's a great seeding ground anyway for your talents. You know, because don't forget, again, you know, the talent side here, particularly say among Haliji women, you know, it's very small and developing. So a great place to develop the talent on YouTube, and then take it over, the best of them over to television streaming. Secondly, as a production, you know, you learn as well in your productions with your producers and directors, learn what works and what doesn't for that particular series. So by the time it gets to television, you've really finessed the thing. And then, as you say, you know, you should, that whole 360 approach, that when you actually finally go to air on TV, that you're still, the whole thing's still alive 24/7 online as well, on social. So I think it works in every respect, because, you know, that's the way the audience behave.
Interesting. And Andrew, from a format point of view, a number of episodes and things like that, what's changing? You know, traditionally in the Middle East, a lot of the shows on Netflix are on Shahid VIP, are 30 episodes because of the Ramadan sort of nightly episode series. But in other parts of the world, we saw, interestingly, the creator of the Queen's Gambit deciding that 6-7 episodes is a nice number. You know, it's better to do it as a binge series like that than squeeze it into a feature-length movie. What are you seeing as the demand, and what are your views on it?
Well, certainly binge watching is, you know, I remember when we first came across the word when I was working at NBC 10 years ago. But I mean, you know, that's when I came across the, but it has become a driver. Yeah, people like to watch that. Yeah, maybe 12 episodes is too much to watch in over one weekend, but if it's 6 or 7, you can, it's just about right, isn't it?
Squeeze it in, a few late nights. Yeah.
As you say, that's the beauty of it, is television. Everything had to fit a schedule. Now, really, you can do whatever you like, can't you? So, you know, I guess that's going to happen increasingly, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. And did you consider launching a sort of an OTT direct-to-consumer platform as well? Are you leading with sort of the brand's category kind of positioning shows that you're doing at the moment?
Not at all. I believe in the expression "fish where the fish are at." You know, yeah, no, we are, you know, we're focusing on the content and the talent side of things, creating great content, and you know, then it can find its right home.
Interesting. Okay. Fair enough. And yeah, so just generally, what are you looking forward to this year in terms of trends? Like, there's a lot of things happening in streaming. There's a lot of things happening on video. We see all these new apps like Cameo. There's OnlyFans, which is getting big in the UK. What do you see for the year ahead on streaming?
Interesting. Yeah. So, well, yeah. I mean, as you say, I think you're seeing streaming going beyond drama now. You know, in the past it was primarily drama. You know, with you know, the HBO and the Netflix. It started. I think you're going to get more reality drama on there, more sports, and I think, yeah, I think that's what's going to change, really. I just think what's happened really is that it's becoming our you know, it's becoming our home channel now, isn't it? You know, we always used to start obviously with our free-to-air channels as our home, and then we go off to these other channels. Now, you know, it's the other way around. I think, you know, television is always going to be there for the live events and for the news, but for everything else, I think streaming's going to grab it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, interesting. So we'll be app flipping instead of channel flipping as we did in the past. Jumping around all these different providers and managing our subscription bills.
I know. Too much choice. It's doing my head.
So much. Amazing. Just finally, before we go, you obviously have a background in production and you're quite familiar with the region with NBC, and you produce shows for Saudi Arabia. What's happening in Saudi in the cinema space seems to be different to what's happening in the US. How do you view that? Like, there's so much cinemas opening up, there's so much demand, yet at the other part of the world, we have this debate around, you know, our cinemas are closing and we're releasing movies at the same time on you know, what's your kind of take on that?
Okay, well, look at the wider world first. You know, I mean, cinemas are not going to die. They are endlessly imaginative, and you know, they've had to develop before, and they'll develop again. You know, there's much more experience-based. You know, things that build on the community experience. You know, even we saw stuff that makes the whole cinema experience more immersive. Obviously, 3D is going to get better and better, and so on and so forth. But even things like secret cinema and things, you know about secret cinema and things here. I think a friend of mine took a daughter to a snow experience where it was freezing. It was snowing while you were watching a snow. I don't know. So, but the cinemas are going to have to fight to stay relevant because you know, home entertainment's just getting better and better, isn't it? Bigger screens, better sound systems. You know, and it's also immediately accessible. I think COVID's probably accelerated that process. With regard to Saudi, I mean, again, it's another exciting development over there, and hopefully they do use it to grow local talent for sure. You know,
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today, Andrew. You've intrigued us more with what you're doing. I'm definitely going to watch the show episodes now on YouTube and wait for the new show come on the platform. I'll be looking to see which one. And yeah, hopefully catch up again in the future as you do more in the production space.
For sure, yeah. Do keep, as I say, the YouTube series is coming back now. We've got a number of partnerships lined up, and Zeros La Heroes. I'll let you know when and where we launch it, but we're very excited about it, and I've really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you very much, Richard. Look forward to next time.
Perfect. All right. Well, have a good weekend. Thank you, Andrew. And